In 1994, this morning's guest came kicking to Francis Marion. Meet him, coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Haberdashery, Gentlemen's Clothiers in the Blackwater Market in historic downtown Conway. We're focused on the kickoff of the Francis Marion University Patriots athletic season, and we're visiting with its athletic director, Murray Hartzler. Good morning, Murray.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for coming in early on a Monday morning. What about the Blackwater Market?
It's gorgeous. Gorgeous
This
place.
is amazing. Yeah. Did you imagine?
No, I did not. I really very impressed with it when I walked in.
Traveling down here early this morning and walking through, just the whole setup is stupendous.
Yes.
Right here, it's almost an entire city block. It just seems to go on and on.
Yes.
Is this your first trip down to Conway?
No, I was in Conway a few years ago. We did, with the Board of Trustees, we had a boat ride in the river, and that was very nice, up the Waccamaw River and back, so that was nice. So I've been in Conway a couple times, but this is a very beautiful store.
Yeah, absolutely. How long have you been at Francis Marion, Murray?
Actually, I came in 1994 as the men's soccer coach and then started the women's program. And then in 2001, I believe, that's when I became just the men's coach and the athletic director. And then I've just resigned as soccer coach and became the full-time athletic director this last year.
Is that right? So for the last 5 or 6 years, you've had this dual hat.
You're right.
That's a big hat.
Yeah, that was a big hat. And you know, we had a plan in place for me to be moved out of athletic director, actually in a couple more years, moved out of, men's soccer in a couple more years.
Right.
Thankfully, we've been able to speed that process up because it's really doing a disservice to the student athletes in the soccer program or your supporters. It was hard to do both. It's just extremely difficult to do both, and some was suffering. So, very important move for the whole overall strength of the athletic department and the athletic program to make that separation. And we have a lot of faith in Coach Varner, though, who we promoted from assistant to head coach to keep the program moving in the right direction.
Right, and with 12 12 particular sports there,
correct,
the opportunity, I think 2 of them are now moving into or have just moved into Division I, and the potentially more opportunities down the road. Correct.
Men's golf and women's soccer, we started the process just a little over 2.5 years ago to move them to Division I. There's a process you go through where you submit annual reports, and in fact we're waiting on we put the last report in June 30th, and we should be hearing any minute or any day. You know, hopefully when I get back in my office, the letter's waiting for us.
That's right. Yeah.
And there's no reason to think that our men's golf and women's soccer program won't be full Division I members. And what that means is we've been competing as Division I the last 2 years and meeting all the Division I requirements, but now with that happen, they'd qualify for NCAA playoffs if they'd be selected. So that's very exciting for them. Both those programs have had a lot of success, and we're continuing to move them forward. So.
Do you know about how many teams compete in NCAA or in Division I? Athletics, is it in the 160, 165,
no. Well,
it's
larger. It's different per sports. All right. So in women's soccer, there's about 280 teams.
Is that right?
In Division I. Typically basketball.
Right.
Basketball, the largest. There are about 400 teams in Division I. You know, when you start looking at all of that. So each sport is a little bit different in terms of sponsorship. At Division, if you're a full Division I member, you have to sponsor without football at least 14 sports. Okay.
Is that right?
You know, it's different if you have a football program than if you don't. And we don't have a football program, so if we eventually would move all our programs to Division I, we would have to add 2 more teams to make that happen. So.
Well, and if you contemplated that, actually, let's go ahead and break down for viewers just what the 6 and 6 are. You've got 6 men's and 6 women's.
Sure. We have men's and women's soccer, men's and women's basketball, baseball, softball, men's and women's tennis, men's golf, volleyball, and men's and women's cross country.
Okay, that's right at 12.
That's right.
You've gotten into T. I hope you won't quiz me to
that's all right.
Them back to you, but that's a and of course are there any that are practicing year-round, or that the students are really there on a year-round basis?
Well, no one's on campus year-round during the summer months unless they're taking some summer classes. But when you're in school, you know, you have both when in soccer, for example, you have both a traditional season in the fall and a non-traditional season in the spring where you can do some practicing. But when you're not even in those, whenever we're in school, you're allowed 8 hours a week where a coach can work with the team members in terms of doing fitness, weightlifting, those type of things, and then 2 hours of those 8 hours can be individual skill instruction. So there's opportunities for the coach to work with the team year-round, but it's different. In season, you're allowed 20 hours a week. Out of season, you're allowed only 8 hours a week. So there's different regulations you have to follow and know throughout the year.
So you're constantly having to stay in tune with, as a coach or as athletic director, with the regulations.
Yeah, this day and age, when we had an opening staff meeting here over a week ago, and this day, and trying to bring all our coaches up to the new NCAA regs that are coming into place, new things that are that sort of thing. And it's a lot different from when I first became a head coach, back in '84. You have to be more in tune to, you had to be in tune back there to the rules and regulations, but there's more important paperwork, and the rules are diverse and they change, and a coach needs to be aware of them and what's happening. And it's really important. My role and our assistant director for compliance, the athletic director for compliance's role is to make sure the coaches are staying up to date with them and they're getting the proper paperwork turned in time, and so we don't have any eligibility issues with student athletes and nothing falls through the cracks. It's a good process. It's just that you need to be aware of them and know what's going on.
Absolutely. Murray, you coached for more than 2 decades.
Yeah, about 23 years, 24 years.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Amazing.
When you think back to your early years of coaching and some of the changes that may have occurred, and of course this was all soccer. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Of course, as you said, you helped to institute the women's program in soccer at Francis Marion, and you arrived at Francis Marion, you said, in '94?
Correct, August of '94.
So the first 10 years of coaching, you were out in the Midwest? Or?
Yeah, I coached at Hiram College, a Division III school.
In Ohio?
In Ohio, southeast of Cleveland. So a Division III school, the small private school, and it's a similar situation where the programs were in terms of success and to where we built them to.
Right.
So, but what's happened over the years, it's just like text messaging. Who would have looked at text messaging, when I started coaching? You wouldn't have thought about that. You look at the use of, when I first started coaching, the use of email wasn't there.
Oh, yeah.
So it's in any profession that, I tell our coaches all the time, you need to constantly be changing, constantly staying up to date with not just technology, but the job changes.
Right.
And if you're not willing to stay up with the changes in the job, you need to make a decision as a person. If you don't like it, then you need to get out of the profession. And there's different requirements, and to be a successful recruiter, to communicate. I don't think there's anybody in today's society that don't realize that coaches has changed and that you've had to adapt to student athletes, and that the way you might went about coaching a student athlete 30, 40 years ago is different than today.
That's a great point.
So, when I think you look at very successful coaches like somebody like Dean Smith, and you look at him, and you look at the changes, they have had to adapt to changes throughout the years and have done that. And that's what successful coaches do. They're able to adapt to the landmark. They still have a philosophy and a core set of values that they stick with.
Right.
And they're able to articulate those and not go past an ethical boundary, but they're also able to adapt to the surroundings around them as recruiting changes, as academic requirements change, as the institution changes, those type of things.
How about some of your heroes in coaching, Murray, over your as you were getting into the profession back in '84 as a full-time basis? And the reason I ask that, trying to think about if some of those heroes are still coaching, and if they have adapted well to the change. You mentioned Dean Smith, a superstar there, and of course his ability, having retired a decade ago, let's say, his ability to potentially keep up with kids. I mean, Coach K's done an amazing job, obviously, but he has a tremendous assistant coaches around who kind of keep him young.
Absolutely.
What about for you, some of those early heroes 25 years ago, 23 years ago, and are any of them still coaching, and do you think they've adapted well to the change?
Well, you look at it and you say there's some that adapted well and some that haven't adapted well from that standpoint. I hesitate to say this will come up with, with a grain of salt, but Bobby Knight, I don't want to say he's a hero, but I've always respected Bobby Knight in certain things.
Right.
Not necessarily his coaching technique, but even when you read Season on the Brink and you read books that are not very flattering about him, they all come across and they talk about the academics he had for his student athletes, the ethical behavior he had, and you knew where he stood with him. So I think that's an important characteristic when you look at Dean Smith, with Coach K, when you look at those type of people, you see people that they definitely stand for something. From that, one of the most famous quotes I'll ever remember about like Bobby Knight is I think people remember the NBA basketball player Shawn Kemp, and it's been well documented several times that Kemp came down to visit to Indiana, and he was sitting and Bobby Knight threw Steve Alford out of practice for what I can't remember, whatever the reason, and he walked over and sat down with Shawn Kemp and just said, I threw the best player in America out of practice. What do you think's going to happen when you come? And that's a fairly unique recruiting scenario, but I think, basically, he was very straightforward in telling the student athlete,
right.
This is what you're going to get, this is what
right.
you're going to expect,
right.
and those are things that I really respect, and when I look at coaches, when I look at people, is there's an integrity about what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily going to agree with everything they do,
right.
but they have a certain integrity, they have a certain belief and a value system that they follow. So,
right.
I want to be careful. A lot of people you love or hate Bobby Knight,
sure.
from that, and so there's different things, but there's certain things that I think he stood for. But I think that's true when you look at Dean Smith, when you look
right.
at a lot of those type of coaches.
Yeah, alphabet starts with an A and ends with a Z. You've been rearranging that in a rightfully so student athlete, mm-hmm. S then A. I mean, the key word there, student ahead of athlete. That's probably difficult for some coaches, as opposed to say athlete student. I mean, it's probably difficult for some coaches. You really want to have that opportunity to keep them on the field more, to keep them practicing. We think about weather like this. Think if you had a football squad. Mm-hmm. It would be difficult to think about getting these guys out. I know we've been reading about Coastal Carolina getting them out late in the afternoon, so they're just totally not worn out.
Taking care of the welfare,
Right.
Our men's soccer, women's soccer are practicing outside right now, and the heat's obviously a very concern, and and making adjustments to practicing early in the morning to practicing late in the night, to deciding, it's difficult for a coach. They're saying, I got X number of days to get prepared for my first game, and maybe because of the heat, I got to take an extra day off because of heat exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough situation for a coach. You're saying, boy, I just gave up a day when I needed it to get something done.
Right.
But for the health and welfare of the student athlete, that's what you need to do. And I think that's the difficulty in college athletics for coaches. There's pressure to win, to succeed for their job, and the good ones are able to keep that perspective in, and they're able to pull themselves back in. There's that ethical line that I keep talking about that they don't cross from that standpoint, and that goes from the academics, everything straight down the line. Academics, the health and welfare of your student athletes, and just taking an interest in them and what's going on. I think the beauty of college athletics and for college students is, they're able to not just participate at a high level, which is an honor, and get some value of that, but they also are able to not just develop relationships, but they have a safety net for them. They have a mentor there for them, mm-hmm. And not the coach, but also the other student athletes, the seniors, and and what you really see in really good programs, and again, you go to North Carolina basketball. I know I've read about Dean Smith doing this. That his seniors on the squad, they had duties of carrying the equipment out to the airplane or the bus, not the rookies,
not the freshmen,
not the freshmen, not the rookies, but the seniors.
Right.
And again, that type of leadership, mm-hmm. and again,
sounds
attention
like Marines,
to detail,
right.
attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
The good coaches, the good people pay a lot of attention to the detail.
Right.
It may not make a huge thing about certain things, but at the same time, there's no detail that goes unnoticed or unturned, or that they haven't considered how that impacts their program.
Sure. Reading about the men's squad, and I know we want to focus more on athletics in whole, but back in '99, where you had a 17-3-1 record for men's soccer there, back in '02, a 15-5-0. Let's say in '02, 5 years ago, and if you finished college in '80, I think I saw, and you've been coaching since '84. I mean, not to date you, but you're at least in your mid-40s, possibly even late 40s there.
Late 40s, you're right.
Think back to mid-40s, or when you're out there with these athletes, student athletes, that are between 18 and 22, mm-hmm. are they pushing you as well? Are they playing around with the coach and saying, you can't get out here and run with us, you can't keep up with us? Right. Is there a need for coach? I mean, should coaches be expected to be able to kind of keep up with their athletes? It's difficult enough trying to think about text messaging.
First of all, you're really asking, I think, two different questions. There's their old saying is, did you have to play the sport to be able to coach it?
Right.
And that is what most people believe, and I do think that brings a big credibility to that scenario. But you can go back years and look at people that are in Major League Baseball that never played in Major League, but they were minor league. And, I think the biggest thing for a coach to be successful is, can they teach and communicate the techniques, the tactics. And that isn't necessarily always the person that was the best player on the team. That isn't, it could be, but that doesn't necessarily have to do with how well their individual athletic career was. From that, I think, Bobby Knight's another good example of that. He was only a backup, and I know and that actually, people talk about that sort of chaffed him at Ohio State. People maybe drove him because he thought maybe he should have started when he was a senior and he was only a backup, but that might have drove him to how hard he drives certain things. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I think it comes down to teaching. I think you really are a teacher out there, and if you're not able to teach, you're not able to communicate and get your points across, it really doesn't matter how well you played the game or did not play the game. And so I think that's really important. When I look to hire a new coach, which I've had to hire several since I've been athletic director at Francis Marion, one is you're looking for a presence in that coach. You're looking for a passion. If they're not passionate, I will not tell a coach what they need. If it's, let's say it's basketball, whether they have to press zone. I'm not into that, but I want them to. I'm looking for can they communicate their style, what they want to try to accomplish? Can they communicate what they're trying, what type of student athlete they're going after, the recruiting? They need to be able to articulate that and have a passion about it that comes through. If they can't, then there's going to be issues, I think, relating to the student athletes.
And to get to that, you go see them in their own environment, see them interacting with the student athletes, whatever school they are, before they come to you, or do you give them a chance to interface with your student athletes to see if they'll be able to get across? That must be a difficult process to find out. Visiting Ohio, let's see, and seeing somebody at your old school.
Well, I'll give you a good example. The best scenario is obviously you get to see them, then you obviously interview them, you're able to talk to people I'm a firm believer that you don't just talk to people on their reference, but when I get serious about a candidate, I let people know, hey, I'm going to call people, if there's somebody I can't contact you, but, I'm going to call people that have worked with you, but they're not going to be on your reference list, because if they're going to be on your reference list, I would hope they're going to give you a good reference. And I want to find out everything I can and do due diligence and homework. Coach Heather Macy, we just hired, women's basketball coach, and I think she's going to do an outstanding job for us. She first came across the radar when Francis Marion played against her when she was head coach at Pfeiffer. So you watch her, you're impressed by somebody. And I think just like the coaches are my team. All right. The athletic, they have their team, their basketball team. And it's not. I shouldn't say it's their team. It's the athletic department's team. It's the university's team. But then the coaches are my team. And as coaches, they're always out there looking for student athletes, recruiting people from that. I think as an athletic director, you're always noting. Up and coming coaches. You're trying to keep your eye on things. You want your coaches to be successful, but you're always planning for the future. Another good example is Gary Edwards. We hired him as the men's basketball coach 2 years ago, and again, I think he's got the program going in the right direction.
Superstar,
But I interviewed an assistant coach at another university, a Division I university, and I was very impressed with him from that. Unfortunately, I didn't think he was the right fit at the right time. But, he's somebody I called him. I told him straight out, and I told him exactly why I made the decisions, and I'm going to be watching his career because I think he's going to be an outstanding coach. I just think he wasn't the right person for us at that particular time. And so, as an athletic director, you're always watching your personnel. You're trying to strive to have your personnel be as successful as they possibly can. But people leave coaching professions for all sorts of different reasons and move on. And I think you want to constantly be looking at people so you have an understanding.
I love that analogy of your 12 coaches as your team. So you haven't given up coaching, clearly.
No, I don't. I don't think you. I don't think you can. And I'll tell you something else that I told my coaches this 2 weeks ago in the thing. I said they need to learn from other coaches. I encourage them. I know I learned a lot just going in and watching a coaching methodology, sitting down and watching a men's basketball coach run his practice and look at the methodology and look at what they were trying to teach and get across and taking content. So I'm encouraging that. And so I hope to be able to, coach the coaches, so to speak, be able to help them. But I'm also trying to learn from them and then try to, build that team together. I think and I use this analogy to them. I don't know, in public, the University of Tennessee has done a great job with having a family atmosphere for their athletic department. If you look at the softball World Series, and when they were out there, who was down there? Fulmer and Summit.
Right.
Okay, when 2 years ago, when Bruce Pearl was hired, where was he? He was in the stands for Summit's Sweet 16 games. Peyton Manning wrote a note to the star pitcher on the softball team saying, "I watched you, I followed you," and from that. And so that's what we're trying to do in the Francis Marion University Athletic Department. Is we're all part collectively of a team.
Right.
You know, the coaches were all, it's not just the basketball program or the soccer program. And then we also fit into the university's mission. And so how do we support that university's mission? And there's a number of different ways you do that. And so that's, you know, my job is to form our 12 teams collectively into a team that supports the university's mission.
And of course, real critical there is making sure everyone recognizes you're not only focused on men's and women's soccer, but the other 10 sports which you hadn't been coaching or hadn't been instrumental in launching in the university. And that's probably a bit of a chore. I mean, to make sure that your focus is very even on everyone, particularly the two that are now moving into Division I, which are not men's and women's soccer, right?
No, well, it's women's soccer and men's golf. Women's soccer and men's golf.
Great.
You take one of each gender.
Right.
And you know, and it is, you know, that's a balancing act. That's really important that coaches, I don't like to use the word fair because I think it's impossible to be fair in life. Everybody has their own idiosyncrasies, but I think what we really try to do is be equitable.
Sure.
You know, and are we treating our student athletes and are we treating every coach with our resources that we have available equitably? And as I think coaches would recognize at Francis Marion, as they've had success, I'm also a firm believer, you know, as a program gets more successful, you know, now you want to keep making more investment into it. You know, and do that. And so I've always a firm believer is don't tell me what you can't do, tell me what you can do.
Right.
And then as you show me what you're doing with those resources and you're being successful, then we're going to, you know, work hard. I know Dr. Carter feels that way, to keep invest more resources into you.
Absolutely.
Into what's going on that serves the mission of the university.
And you're seeing that a lot over your 13 years at Francis Marion, a heck of a lot of investment as they've seen your success. A heck of a lot of investment back in, both from alumni, from the state, from other folks who find ways to plow dollars back into Francis Marion. You're seeing that now. We've got just a few minutes, and we want to highlight some of those great things that are happening on campus for viewers who may not have been out on the campus recently. And I know school starts, you said, 8/22 in just a couple of weeks, but for folks who haven't been out there, why should they come out and visit Francis Marion University? Well,
there's a number of things. They have been on campus recently. The School of Nursing that just opened a brand new building last fall. We're going to start construction on a fine arts center downtown in Florence. We had a gift both from the state and the private donor for the Bruce and Lee Foundation. Center for the Child is going to start construction open. That is going to be great for our psychology and for our education observing students, but also being daycare for our faculty and for other people in the community. That construction is supposed to start here, I think, January 1st, but it's supposed to be open by next fall. We've built in the lab. We just opening this fall. They're putting the furniture in right now. 250 more what we call the villas, really village-style apartments. They're very nice, and that'll make 500 in the last 4 years. A new grill for the students to eat at, giving us another opportunity other than the dining hall, outdoor swimming pool. Under Dr. Carter's leadership, we've been very successful, and just look at the landscaping that's happened in really changing the physical appearance. And then in athletics, we've been able to purchase. We're directly across the road, another 100 acres that we have schools committed, and we're looking at 2010 the building. By that time, to start building construction of new baseball field, new soccer field, across and softball fields across the road. When I say across the road, it's directly across from the school. It's really connected from that. So we're very excited about that. And again, I think that's again, you know, the school, the community putting an investment in athletics, and so we're really excited about that.
And of course, for so many folks who haven't been out to Francis Marion, it's real easy to find. It's right off of, is it 52 or 76?
76-301. 76-301. I mean, if you're coming out from the beach, just straight down 501 turns into 76-301, and you're going to run right into the school. Can't miss the big electronic sign right there at 327. You turn in there. And what most people are surprised, because the way the corner is, you see only a brief, small part of the college on that corner, and they don't realize that we're now over 400 acres. And until you turn back in, it's a very gorgeous campus. The physical plant does a great job of keeping the grounds up.
You yearn over the next few years to make that move to try to add 2 more programs and make the move to move everything into Division I?
That's clearly a direction we're looking. I think in the administration we did a smart move by taking the 2 sports Division I. We've learned about the process, learned about the rules and regulations that we need to follow.
Right.
And so I think that was a smart step for us. Clearly that is, you know, the road that we're going down to look at taking all our sports teams Division I. It's really a matter of making sure that we have all the personnel and all the resources in place, also making sure we find the right conference affiliation for us to get in. And so I think, and tying those in with the outdoor facilities we're building. So I would say, you know, you're looking, hopefully if things go well, we're looking at that type of same time frame where we start construction in 2010, that we're making the same move with the rest of the teams at about the same time.
Great. Murray, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Sorry
My
we're
pleasure.
running out of time. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Murray Hartzler coming up next. You think it's a tough thing making that transition from full-time men's soccer coach into full-time athletic director? You and I would think it's a tough thing. This is something he's done before. He's made big transitions. Arrives here in the PD in 1994 to take over as the head men's soccer coach at Francis Marion. What does he do the next year? He kicks off the women's soccer program right now in the throes of expanding these 12 teams possibly into more opportunities on campus, but moving 2 teams into Division I athletics. It's a big deal. NCAA, those are key words. Other key words, fmarion.edu, fmarion.edu, or what Murray talked about, an open door policy at Francis Marion and the athletics department. 843-661-1240. That's the athletics department phone number. Give them a call. Learn more about Francis Marion University. It's tremendous athletics department, and it's tremendous student athletes. Go online, fmarion.edu.